181st episode of the Atlas Society Asks. My name is Jennifer Grossman. My friends call me Jag. I'm the CEO of the Atlas Society. We are probably most famous for engaging young people with the ideas of Ayn Rand in creative ways, such as our graphic novels, our animated videos, and now music. Today, we are joined by a new friend and maybe a new creative partner, Akira The Don. A lot of you already know who he is, but before I even begin to give him a full introduction, I want to remind all of you who are joining us on Zoom, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. You can use the comment section. Go ahead, get started. Type your questions into the queue, and we will get to as many of them as we can. So Akira is described by industry press as the Western Hemisphere's greatest living pop star and a generation YouTube Renaissance man. He's best known for his Meaningwave Universe and oeuvre that he describes as, quote, a musical psychotechnology with the aim of helping listeners achieve their potential in their lifetime. In producing these releases, he's collaborated with Peterson, Joe Rogan, Naval Ravikant, and most recently with us here at the Atlas Society on the very first Rand-inspired Meaningwave experience. Akira, thanks for joining us.
Buen dia. That was nice. What a lovely intro. Thank you very much. What a professional you are.
So a bit of background for those watching us. I was put on the path of discovering Akira and his Meaningwave after a fitness class in Malibu. It was during the cool down period. We're all in Shavasana, and playing is this just hauntingly beautiful music with the words of Jordan Peterson telling me to clean up my room. And I was just blown away. My first thought was, this is incredible. My second thought was, can we do something with Ayn Rand? So I tracked Akira down in Mexico to propose a collaboration. I think we talked for nearly an hour and a half. I have so many questions. I barely know where to begin, but let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up? And what helped send you on the amazingly creative path and the artistic oeuvre of Meaningwave?
That's a big question. Well, the first bit's like small, and then the second bit's big, right? I grew up in the UK. I was born in the middle of the UK in the industrial wasteland of West Bromwich, which is, yeah, it's an industrial wasteland. And then when I was like 2, 3, we moved to North Wales, which is the opposite of an industrial wasteland in many ways. And it's kind of, if you think of Lord of the Rings, it looks like that. And depending on what the weather's doing, it's either like Hobbit, the Shire, or it's Mordor, depending on what's going on weather-wise. So I was like in a valley with like sleep mountains everywhere. And everyone spoke this weird language called Welsh, or they say Cymraeg, which I did not speak. And when I went to school, they were teaching me English and Welsh, which was kind of confusing. So I guess that was probably influential on how I turned out. Yeah. But anyway, that's so I began in that part of the world, and obviously now I live in Mexico, and I've lived in the USA for like 8 or 9 years, and I've been all over the place.
Were there musicians in your life? Were there any early kinds of music that, like, what did you grow up listening to? Was it rap? Was it
There
pop?
weren't musicians, but like my dad had a an incredible broad and knowledgeable sort of love of and collection of music. So there was always lots of music around, and I always loved it and was fascinated with it. Apparently, when I was in the process of not being like born yet, what's that part of your life called, gestation? When I was gestating, yes, they went to see Adam and the Ants, and apparently I kicked along rhythmically to Adam and the Ants.
That's a great story. And then what about sort of any influences that shaped your worldview? I mean, that put you on this path.
Well, it's funny, right? Because a lot of the music, and you will know this about music, particularly, the philosophy or the politics or what have you of music is predominantly very left wing and and I don't know, I remember it being very socialist. I remember hearing lots of Billy Bragg and stuff like that when I was little, talking about powers in a union and, you know, rich people being evil and all that sort of thing. Um, and my parents were very much socialists.
Hmm.
Um, I had, here's the thing. I've I've mentioned this recently in other things, and I don't know why it is, but I don't remember anything before seven. And then when I'm seven, like I remember being seven, and remember like loving music and sort of art and drawing and comic books and things like that. And got my first job when I was seven. I was digging gardens for people and stuff of that nature. And I always had jobs after I was digging gardens for people. I was digging holes and doing shrubbery rearrangements and strimming and stuff like that. I was doing paper rounds and then washing dishes and then working in pubs and so on and so forth. Like I always worked a lot and very hard. And then simultaneously, I was always very aware of what I wanted to do, which was to create music and comics and stuff of that nature. So I was always working on that and doing that in whatever manner that I could. So I used to make little comics, and first I would just make them and draw them, and then I would sell them at school. Like when I was seven, I remember doing this, and I also used to make mixtapes for people similarly. And if I liked the people, I would give them the mixtapes, and you know, if they were a girl that I was into or something like that. But I would sell mixtapes as well. And I used to do these experiments with like copying loops of music from one cassette to another cassette and dubbing things over the top of it and cutting the tape up and sticking it back together with sellotape and things of that nature. Because that was all, I didn't have any instruments or anything, but I did have cassettes. So from as early as I can remember, I was doing these experiments with cassettes, and I was making mixtapes, and I was sampling bits of spoken word and stuff of that nature off of the TV they had in the science block in school and things like that. So yeah, I was always
Yeah.
doing it.
So is it fair to say that the roots of Meaningwave go back to that time, or was there some other uh, experience that gave you that idea, the same kind of, epiphany that you had when it came to the Ayn Rand Meaningwave that you did?
Well, yeah, I mean, that stuff goes back as far as I remember. And the other thing was I always loved books, so I was always reading, and I was always very interested in ideas. And before I even knew what philosophy was, I was interested in it, and always thought in that manner. And I always, when I got to the point where I was making my own records, I was always incorporating pieces of other people's speech or bits of books or bits of speeches or movies or what have you into the music. I always loved that aspect of, say, for example, what was going on in the early 90s with hip hop, but also rock music. There was a lot of people doing skits, as they were known at that point, where they'd sample a bit of a TV show or somebody talking or something and use that to like set up the song. I used to
Hmm.
do, when I was doing my very early records, I'd have a couple of songs that were like songs, then a song that was like that. But I was like, what if that was the whole song? If I just had music and somebody, say, one example I did very early was Jack Kirby, who created the Marvel Universe, pretty much, talking about how he did that and how he was a conduit for the divine and so on and so forth, and how these characters just appeared to him fully formed and they just kind of came through him and so on and so forth. But also, I love in that speech he was talking about his motivations, and he was you know, he loved the work and he loved the imagery and what have you, but he was like, you know, and I had to make sales. I had to provide for my family. And I had made great sales. And that made me very happy. And that made the people I was working for very happy. And I made lots of sales. You know, so it's this combination of creating wonderful stuff and simultaneously being you know, able to provide for his family and be paid well for doing that. I did love that
Well,
about
I
Jack
think
Kirby.
that people like to think of the starving artist, but being an art entrepreneur is also kind of an artistic endeavor. I mean, both art and
Hmm.
being an entrepreneur, you have to be very creative. You have to be very resourceful. You're bringing something new into the world, whether it's a new composition or, uh, you know, this by our Marvel Comics illustrator, uh, Dan Parson. So there is a lot of similarity. So since my first Meaningwave was that Jordan Peterson song, tell me, how did that collaboration begin? Were you just reading Jordan Peterson and thought it was intriguing? Did he reach out to you? You reach out to him? How did it come about?
Let me very quickly run across the room and turn you down over there. I've been very unprofessional. There's a speaker that you're coming out of on the other side of the room. It's a new studio. You have to apologize.
Okay. Well, while he's doing that, why don't we play a 1 minute excerpt, the entire Meaningwave?
There you go. See, that was easy.
Okay.
See, easy. But still, well, the Peterson thing was in around 2017, I believe it was. I was living in Los Angeles and I was DJing on Hollywood Boulevard most of the time. And I was playing in those sort of swanky bottle service Hollywood Boulevard sort of places. And then I would come back from DJing and I would need to decompress from all the lunacy that I had just been a part of, privy to, and contributed to. And I used to have a projector and I would put YouTube on and have people talking, just running while I sort of sat there and decompressed. And Jordan Peterson came on, as he often used to at that point. In around 2016, Jordan Peterson was just sort of appearing. And what was cool about when Jordan Peterson popped up was he became known via incidents of notoriety, right? Notorious incident, well, a specific notorious incident in that case, which was the C16 protest thing, right? And the accompanying video. But then when you went and looked into Jordan Peterson, he had hundreds of hours of lectures on his YouTube channel, right? Hundreds and hundreds of hours of like fascinating lectures, breaking down sort of mythopoetical, psychological, evolutionary, biological, etc. type stuff. So you could put those on for hours, you know, they were cool. So I used to put those on. And anyway, I'm sat there and he says something about how you should be a plumber. He's like, you should be a plumber, which is a cool thing to say. And it's an unusual thing to say. He's like, be a plumber, man, be a good one, but be a good one. And he's explaining why it's very important to, you know, all these positions in our society are all very, very important and useful, but you should do them properly and really, really well. Otherwise, you're mucking up the universe, you know. And I thought that was really cool and I should turn it into a song. So I did. And people really liked it. And that week, I'd heard James Altucher on a podcast say something about how you should quadruple down on what works. And that song I did was, people really liked it. It was one of the most popular things I'd done recently at that point. That was like what was that? 2016? That was like 16 years into my career at that point. So I'd been doing a lot of stuff for a long time. But anyway, so I was like, all right, let me try more of this. So I did a whole mixtape. And at the point that I did the mixtape, or it might have been when I did the first song. No, it was the mixtape, I think. Anyway, Peterson came across it and tweeted it, and I was very complimentary about it. And then I decided I wanted to make an album based around his 12 Rules for Life. I was like, what if I could take this idea and really sort of go deep into it and turn it into an album, or just a song or a mixtape where things kind of flow around or loosely associated? What if I could make 12 specific individual songs that work as songs, as records, but also as delivery mechanisms for this message, which I find very useful and powerful. And so I hit him up and asked him if he'd be into that, and he was. And lo, we did it, and have done
the
more
rest,
things
and
since.
the rest is history.
Yeah, and to the point that I actually got him to record vocals specifically for one track, which was 42 Rules for Life, because he'd never actually read that aloud anywhere. So I asked him if he could perform that for me so I could turn it into a record. And he sent over 2 takes, and they were really good.
Wow. Okay, so that is a real working collaboration. So when I first tracked you down in Mexico, I had no idea whether you'd have any familiarity with the literature and ideas of Ayn Rand. And obviously, I was thrilled to learn just how knowledgeable and passionate you were on the subject. So what is your Ayn Rand origin story? Did someone recommend her literature, or again, did you discover it, by interviews or videos?
I've been trying to remember that. She was always there. She's one of those people who's always there. It's like, when did you first hear Nietzsche? Or there's certain ideas and figures that had always been around. But I'd kind of gone in and I'd investigated her on a number of times as a result of being triggered by having seen something. And I remember one occasion early was I read somewhere, and it's always this wonderful thing about how haters do the most promo for people. You know, Peterson
Right.
certainly found this. His detractors made him what he became, you know, what he is today. And in the case of Rand in this instance, I remember some people being very angry that Steve Ditko, who was the co-creator of Spider-Man, was a big fan of
Longtime
Rand.
donor to
Rand
the Atlas Society.
oh, well, there you go. Well, rest in peace, epic
Yes.
human. Um, yeah, and considered himself an objectivist and so on and so forth. You know, and obviously he's a genius. And I was interested in, well, what is this awful thing that he's supposedly that makes him a bad person? And
Yes,
I was like,
this
oh yeah, it's that
heresy.
stuff, which I'd looked and I was already aware of it from somewhere before. I was like, oh, it's that, but what I don't. I was so confused for a long time as to why people objected to that so much, and why they considered it to be so awful. It took me a while to realize the terrifying truth of that. But then the terrifying truth of that is in all her work anyway. She's quite explicit about it. But
Mhm.
anyway, and then the other
Yeah, I
time I
mean,
remember. Oh, go on.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, another time I remember Ninja from Deanswood when Deanswood first popped up. It did like 15 years ago or something. Are you aware of them? They're a
Mm-mm.
South. They're a South African rave rap crew who blew up in a sort of mimetic fashion and have been very big since. Very creative, very interesting. I remember in a very early interview with the lead creative force and producer rapper guy in that crew, Deanswood is a guy who called himself Ninja. Him talking about how the Fountainhead was a foundational work that allowed him, that kind of gave him permission to do and be what he wished to in a way
Wow.
that he'd formerly felt guilty about. So that was a
Oh,
kind of
wow.
turning point for him and
Amazing.
made him able, because he'd been in a bunch of other bands previously, all of which had stalled in some shape or form. And he felt that the reason they'd stalled and the reason that this one did so well was that he was able to let go of a bunch of self-imposed limitations as a result of reading Rand's work. And I was like, oh, so I need to look into this more as well.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
we're definitely going to have to track down that interview
Mm.
because that is totally news to me. So now we're going to try to play. So as I was mentioning before, the Ayn Rand Meaningwave is it's in three parts. It's in total about 14 minutes long. We're going to try to sample a minute of that. We'll have to see if YouTube gets angry with us because it's
You know I
copyrighted
would.
material.
No, I let
Yeah.
my
So
stuff be used.
okay. All
I'm a
right. Well,
hippie.
let's.
I'm a hippie in that regard. I try not to get in the way of people sharing, and introducing people to my work. That seems silly to me.
I like your way of thinking. Okay, Lawrence, give it a try. Let's see if we can. This is going to be from my treasures. So it's
Ooh.
the middle part, which I thought was particularly evocative. It is from chapter 11 of um, of Anthem, and you'll see it's illustrated here. So let's give it a whirl. 1 minute.
Nice.
For I know what happiness is possible to me on earth, and my happiness needs no higher aim to vindicate it, to vindicate it. My happiness is not the means to any end, it is the end, it is its own goal, it is its own purpose. Neither am I the means to any end, others may wish to accomplish. I am not a tool for their use, I am not a servant of their needs, I am not a bandage for their wounds.
Amazing. I mean, I cannot. I don't know.
Wow. Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
I have
Wow.
listened
That's
to it,
crazy.
I don't probably 100 times, and I can't listen to it without getting um, goosebumps. I'm sure we've already put the link in all of the chats, but it is to me like mainlining objectivism. I mean, it's right there. It is the ethics. It is the metaphysics. It is the epistemology, all rolled into one. And I highly recommend, guys, if you haven't already listened to it, and then also go out and get yourself a copy of another artistic adaptation. So let's talk a little bit about the creative process, because I know we were going back and forth, and then one day you called me. You were so excited. You had been on the beach, and you're like, I've got it. I can't talk now because I have to go and lay it down. So talk a bit about it.
Well, it's funny, right? Because I'd had you guys hit me up, and something happened with the communication, wherein I don't know, I can't remember what happened, but I didn't see it till a year later or something of that nature. So I didn't get back after you'd first reached out. I didn't get back to you for like a year, which sounds like typical like loser artist behavior. And I'm not. I'm very on top of things. I'm very professional and on time and stuff of that nature. So I don't know how that possibly could have happened. But either way,
fortunately, I'm extremely persistent.
Yes, you are. Yes, I was very impressed with your tenacity. And I had Ayn Rand on my sort of, I hate to call it a to-do list. I have a very powerful and epic spreadsheet, which has my plans in it in the shape or form. And I'm working towards all sorts of ideas and voices. And the way I work with everything is that I will be working on essentially an idea that I have a number of different viewpoints on from different thinkers, speakers, etc. And then I will build upon that with the next idea and so on and so forth. And it's always moving towards other things. And Rand's been in there for a while. And then you hit me up. And you were the one who suggested that I read Anthem, which I'd not read. And it was on my list of things to read, and I was aware that there was a section in it that was sort of a definitive encapsulation of her ideas and so on and so forth. I remember someone had said, like, really, you don't even need to read the whole thing. You could read just like the end bit, which I disagree with. I feel that the setup is really useful. But anyway, I was reading that, and I was maneuvering between a Project Gutenberg version of it and an audiobook version of it over a period of a week or something, where I was flying around the place. I think I was in the USA or something. Anyway, and that was it. I'd read half of it in the USA or something. Then I got back to Mexico, and I went for a walk to the beach, and I was listening to the end of it basically. And as I got to the beach, I'm walking along the beach, and chapter 11 comes on. And then as I'm listening to the words, the whole thing, I was, oh shit, this is the bit, isn't it? And I had one of those hair stand up things because I could hear all the music, and I was like, oh, that's the chorus, right? That just the very first lines are obviously a chorus. And I was like, oh, it's another song. As it moves to the middle, this is a completely different this is a different song. And this is where it takes this dark turn. And I was like, oh, imagine if it becomes all triumphant and gloriful at the end. Oh my God, it does get all triumphant and gloriful and transcendent at the end. Oh, I know exactly what this sounds like and what it is. And I had it in my head, and I had to like leg it back to get to the studio and get it out before it sort of faded away, as these things can do if you do not nail them down in time, So anyway, that's pretty much how that went.
And guys, again, thanks everybody for patience. I am going to get to your questions. As you can see, I'm very passionate. Some might say a little obsessed about Akira's music and about this artist. But that spreadsheet, because I remember when we first talked, and I had said, well, look, we have a gala. It's coming up in I don't know how it was, like 4 months or 5 months at the time, and I would like to premiere this at the gala. And you were like, well, I plan my projects out like years in advance. And it was like, I might be able to get to this in a couple of years. I'm like, no, we have to do this now. So, why did we make the cut and get you to take a pause on your schedule?
Well, it wasn't deliberate. It was like, oh, well, you were like, oh, we could do a live show or something. I was like, well, that'd be cool. It'd be nice to go back to the USA after I got so
Yeah.
unceremoniously locked out of there a couple of years ago for the hideous crime of being unvaccinated. And I need, they just lifted that, and it was like, well, that'd be a nice reason to pop back, to do a show. I could put together something, and it wouldn't take too long, and it could be cool. And I have all these things already that like I'd said, bits of round stuff that I wanted to use. But then when I read and experienced that part of Anthem, it was that, well, it's not a little thing now. This is actually sort of a 3-track EP, and I need to get a string section involved, and this, that, and the other needs to occur. But it was one of those ones where it's like, but sometimes you have to make room for inspiration.
Right.
I always have that kind of say I've got the next year planned out, and I've got some room in that, wiggle room in there for inspiration. Something might suddenly occur that's very, very powerful, and it's very, very necessary that you do that there and then. That was one of my favorite little lines from one of the Naval records I did, where he says inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. And I found that really to be true. If you don't take advantage of that flash of glory when it appears to you, you may not be able to recreate it, rekindle it, or even remember it. So
yeah, it's
it's
interesting.
Also, there's the fact that you are a very professional, and you guys are a very professional operation, and you pay correctly, and that's very important. You know what I mean? So
Hey, we're
the whole thing,
capitalists.
exactly. So the whole thing,
we have extremely high respect for artists, and we were
I
just
was trying to explain this to my son. Well, he doesn't really explain. He was saying there's a friend of his, one of his best friends, was angry at the developer of a game they like to play together. And that was because the developer had put a tweet out saying the people who pay for free are the most entitled. And his friend was angry at the creator for saying that. But I was like, no, this is very true, son of mine. You will really find this. Those who contribute the least expect the most. And those who contribute the most are the ones who respect what you do the most, and they will allow you to do what you do and be grateful to you for it. You know what I mean? And I really found that to be the case my whole life. If I had advice for anyone, it would be like, put your price up. Whatever you're doing, if you're good, if you believe in what you're doing, you believe in your worth, then put your price up, because keeping it down or putting it down to try and get business or whatever it is will get you the wrong kind of business. It'll get you the wrong kind of people, and you'll be working with people who do not respect you or your time.
I feel a Fountainhead Meaningwave coming on about artistic integrity and not compromising your creative ideals.
Well, it's not about who's going to let me, is it? It's about who's going to stop me. And that was
also
always
from
the case.
Fountainhead.
And I always believed that.
And what you say about inspiration, I think, is doubly resonant when it comes to Anthem. Many people don't know that Ayn Rand wrote her dystopian novella about a dozen years before George Orwell published 1984.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what makes this so special, one of the things, is that she incorporates how people change language in order to control thought, right? So you'll see that the word I has been banished, and that this leads to all kinds of corruption. But the way that it reads is, there's a reason why she titled it Anthem. So it really does come across as just something that sprang directly from her soul and from her head, and it's just so powerful.
It's fully formed as a piece of music, particularly. The whole thing works, but then you get to chapter 11, and chapter 11 or part 11 or book 11 or however it is, but is an anthem. It is written in song. It is written in verse. It departs from her usual style of writing and becomes that which it is titled. I didn't change a single word. No, I didn't have to change a single word. I didn't have to move anything around or break anything up. It is as it is, and it is fully formed music. It is a fully formed 3-part anthem as written. It was pretty amazing to discover.
What's the response been?
Yeah,
I mean,
everyone
because
who's
she
heard
is
it loves it.
controversial, and so
Yeah, I mean, I don't do much in the way of expecting. I've had experiences before where I've done things and people have been upset with me and wished death upon my family and threatened me and all sorts of things. Some people were really upset when I did stuff with Peterson, and some people were very upset when I did a record with Scott Adams, of all people. Some weird, anyway, I don't want to talk about the individual, give them any kind of, but yeah, weird people pop up. But anyway, on this one, what I've mostly had, aside from people saying this is beautiful, I love this, da da da, is people saying, I thought I didn't like this person, but I really like these songs. And oh, you've gone and made me like this person now, or oh, I'd never thought of it that way, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of that sort of thing, particularly from the kind of maybe a lot of, I'd said this to you before. I notice intersections with thinkers when I'm making these records, and I discovered, oh, there's an intersection between Alan Watts and Ayn Rand, which most people would never think to be the case. I found one with Marcus Aurelius that makes it seems a bit more obvious, and thus I noticed that. And then after having put it out into the world, I've been getting letters from people who are like, oh, I really love your Alan Watts stuff, and I really love this Anthem thing, and I really didn't think I would, and da 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 da.
I didn't think I would. All right.
I
My
didn't think, or
most
maybe it's I
patient
didn't think I was
audience.
supposed to, is what the thing, because people get told you're not gonna, you don't like this person, this is a bad person. They have bad ideas, you're a good person, so you would never even entertain them because you're a good person. The person thinks, yes, I'm a good person. I wouldn't entertain bad ideas, so this person goes in the naughty pile. And then they rarely even actually look into the ideas. They just assume they're bad. I get letters from people all the time expressing variations on this theme from multiple sides. People who discover, say, the opposite, who get into some of Watts's ideas, having thought of themselves as very staunch conservative types, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I think also even the average, layperson who's never read any Ayn Rand, or maybe who have bought into, again, just one of these lies that gets repeated, that she's a horrible writer, and you can't listen to your music and deny the beauty of those words. Okay, most patient audience. We're going to get to some questions now, though I still have quite a few of my own. Our friend, My Modern Galt, on Instagram asks, writers sometimes get writer's block. Is there an equivalent for you with music, and what do you do to get past it?
Yeah, I haven't had anything like that since like 2017 or something. And there's a reason for that, which is I worked out, well, and everybody knows this, I didn't work this out, but I had observed that there is such a thing as the zone, which is a place. Essentially, you can think of it as a place, and it's a place in which you're maximally creative and everything flows, and you can do no wrong, and it's wonderful, right? And sometimes people find themselves in this place, and it's fantastic, and then they leave the place, and then they try and get back there, and they have trouble, and they have these blocks of which you speak, these blocks, and so on and so forth. And I thought to myself, well, what if I've been in the zone? It's great in there. I'm good at it. What if I just got in that place and refused to leave and just stayed there? Then I would never have to worry about a writer's block or anything like that, right? So I did this. I engineered this very specifically and deliberately in February of 2018, and have been there ever since, and have not had any kind of writer's block or any of that sort of thing since. I've made over 100 albums, going on 600 songs, all of them excellent, some of them transcendently brilliant. None of them I regret. It used to be the case that I would look back on my work and be like, oh, I don't like that, I changed that, da 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 da. Everything I've made since this period, I look back upon happily and fondly. I would certainly do it differently today, because today I am different, but I do not look back at it with that kind of cringing embarrassment as one does one's old diaries or something of that nature. So yeah, that's the thing, right? Is basically what you need to do is get in the zone and refuse to leave. And what will mess with you is friction and overthinking. So you need to, there's lots of things. I should do a course on this, but certainly you need to remove friction wherever it is. Anything that will get in the way or distract you or pull you out of that place. You need to be showing up every day. You need to be doing something related to your endeavor, on a daily basis. So you're always in that place. Doesn't matter if you're tired or sick or confused or grumpy or whatever is going on, you need to show up. You don't sit around waiting for the muses. You go to where they live, you knock down the door, and you go in there and you take what you want. And they will observe you and they'll go, huh, this person is serious. And after a while, they'll be like, okay, I like this person. And they will crack out the good shit and they will give you access to the greatness, you know? So you want to be doing that.
And you want to be listening to Meaningwave.
Yes,
I
the
think
lessons are within
really,
it.
definitely, the lessons are in it, but there's just also something about the experience of absorbing it that makes you more open to creative possibilities. All right, Jessica Sheffield, who
Creative
you might remember.
possibilities, so yes. But just to finish that, sorry, creative possibilities is a good point. And here's the thing: is sometimes people get writer's block and stuff because they're just trying to do the same thing in the same way. There's lots of ways of doing things and many different approaches, and doing things in slightly different ways is very important. One aspect of being in the zone, one thing that will get you out of the zone, is becoming too comfortable and doing the same thing too much. You have to have an aspect of chaos and uncertainty in there to remain in that zone, proximal, glowing, glittering place. There has to be the capacity for complete failure. So people who get too competent fall out and lose their capacity for greatness, just in the same way that people have zero competence. Sometimes zero competence people can accidentally do something wonderful. Too competent people find it more difficult. So you always want to be introducing new ways of doing things, new tools, new techniques, whatever it is, to keep you in a place of potential catastrophe.
Which means taking risks and being comfortable with that. And being, not so deathly afraid of failure that you don't take risks. Having enough self-esteem to know if you fail, you will learn, you'll get up and you'll go on. And I think if I had one thing to credit the phenomenal growth of the Atlas Society in the past several years, it's been a willingness to take risks, a tolerance, and even embrace of mistakes, because that has helped us to innovate, and other groups that just are doing the same thing over and over again. I think when you feel like you've got what you have and it's working, the Atlas Society, we're always in startup mode. So we're always open to doing things differently. Again, Jessica Sheffield, who you remember dancing in the front row at the gala, asks whether, Akira, you have any plans for additional concert shows in the United States and how we can find out about that.
Yeah, next time Jagney wants me to do something, I'll do it, and you can look forward to that. Nothing specific yet. I'm sure there will be. Like I said, you're allowed to visit the USA now without being injected, so I can do that if I so wish. There was initially, it all got disrupted by all that stuff, but we had planned to do a tour, and I still look forward to doing that. Yeah, but I've just literally finished building this studio here, so now we're going into full-blown mode in this new studio, and we're going to be doing a lot of live broadcasts from here, and then we're going to work on creating some opportunities to step into your lives, into your real world lives.
Yes,
press that button.
I need one of those.
I was going to say, everyone should have one of these. You should just be able to just press a button and create useful noises at a conclusion of your point. It's a great way of just moving from subject to subject.
All right. Let's see. On Facebook, Candace Morena is asking, where do you think art comes from? Is it taught or does it come from within?
Well, Rand, Rand probably wouldn't have liked my answer on this, which is a bit woo. But I don't know if maybe she would, because she does say it. I mean, it's basically, it is all within, but within contains everything that is without. The world is a mirror. And this is, I think Joseph Campbell said this, art holds a mirror up to nature, and art holds a mirror up to yourself. And it's a way by which you can navigate the world, see where you are in context of the whole of society. It's how you download the knowledge of the society. That's what myth is, so it's kind of both. We are taught our position within society by the art that we consume. which is why they spend so much effort. Disney have spent so much effort propagandizing recently, and it's been such an utter failure as well. Because it's only true art that works and lasts and communicates, and propaganda does not. And this is the problem they're having. So I suppose it's both. It is within, and everything you require is within you already. And as for that thing of which I speak, that place where one gets those ideas, the fifth dimension is considered by some, idea space by others. The realm of the muses, whatever it is. You could think of it as something without that you can go into. You could think of it as something that is within you that you have to remember or have to sort of navigate towards. It doesn't really matter. All these things are operating systems. Whichever way you can best utilize them to have the optimal experience in this realm of tears, then the better.
Or this benevolent universe. Ayn Rand called
It's
art
God.
a recreation.
It's God. That's what it is. That's what God is, you see.
Yes. Well, but as you had in the in your trilogy in chapter 11, that recognizing that the divine was not, some kind of mystical character in the sky, but it was you, that
it's
you
a practical
were
thing, and that's in the Christian faith. That's the point of Jesus. Everything is possible through my Son, who is within you. You are He, and all that sort of thing. It's basically saying the same thing. Some people get stuck on the semantics of it, or maybe
the complete opposite thing. Anyway, let's go on to another question, because we have quite a few coming up. All right. Kindred Lyrics on X wants to know what's next for Meaningwave.
Next for Meaningwave, immediate future. We've got a big 4-hour lo-fi Christmas record tomorrow. And then we've got Meditations 2. That's the big next. So that would be the second volume of incredible records with lyrics adapted from the writings of Marcus Aurelius. And this is an insanely great record. I'm very flabbergasted by it. I was like straight into that. I think I was working on the writing of it, and then I did Anthem, and then Anthem infused me with an extra level of superpowers, which I then put into the finishing of Meditations, and Meditations 2 came out by far the most nuclear level glory I've ever had anything to do with. So people will like that. And then there's lots of other wonderful things. We have a very stacked next year and the year after, and so on and so forth, ad infinitum, forever and ever, amen.
Amazing. So Georgi Alexopoulos picked up on something that you mentioned earlier. He's on Facebook, and he said, when is Akira the Don masterclass? When will that be? Well, Georgie, we might be able to make that happen. Make sure that you're following the Atlas Society. We have a few conferences coming up, so we'll have to discuss this offline.
Yes.
So, I also am curious about life in Mexico. It sounds like you got kicked out of the United States. How did you choose Mexico? What are the opportunities or challenges of living there as both a creative artist and as a family?
Well, let me see. Let me unpack that. So when said we didn't get kicked out, well, we just didn't get let back in. I got given a new visa. Here's your new visa, Akira the Don, the alien of extraordinary ability visa, the one that says you have to be in the country because no one else in the country can do what you do. To get the visa, you have to go out, go to an embassy, get it stamped, then you come back in. So we did that, but then we couldn't get back in because the Biden administration decided that it was unsafe for scum like me to come in the country. Anyway, we went to Mexico because I'd always wanted to go to Mexico for multiple reasons. One was that I always really liked that movie True Romance, and at the end they go to Cancun. Boom. And so two was that I really liked being in Mexico when I was playing Red Dead Redemption, a video game that was very beautiful and a lovely experience. And lots of other things, cultural, musical, so on and so forth. So we're like, oh, we'll go to Cancun to go to the embassy there. And then, of course, we got sort of unable to go back into the USA. And then we were like, well, we quite like it here. We'd found ourselves in Playa del Carmen and very quickly made friends and found cool people. And stuff of that nature. I'd started going to a CrossFit class and getting into the best shape I'd ever been anywhere near, and so on and so forth. And then we thought, well, of all the places to be while all this is going on, this is rather wonderful. This paradise where we are specifically. You know, and life is as kind as you let it be, you know? So we're like, well, we'll go with this and we'll make of this, you know, the best situation that we can. And it's turned out great. You know, it's difficult being in a place where you don't speak the language. I've been working on learning that, but it's very difficult to not be able to fully express oneself and crack jokes in elevators and things of that nature. I remember when I got my first joke off, I was so very, very happy. You know,
it is
in
definitely
Australia.
challenging. You know, the Spanish and Latin American sense of humor and the American, to say nothing of the British sense of humor, they're not always on. So I do speak fairly passable Spanish, but I've had
Nice.
quite a few fails when it comes to trying to crack jokes. All right,
Yeah,
we'll take a few more questions
I
from
was
the
used to
audience.
it. I was used to it. Like I said earlier, I've kind of always been, you know, in a foreign place as long as I can remember. So I'm used to that. I don't have any problems with that, and I kind of thrive in that and enjoy that. And I very much enjoy discovering other cultures. And it was cool being in Mexico because you hear all this stuff about Mexico and the way that it is presented. It really isn't the reality of it. It's, well, certainly not what I have experienced of it. You know, the only difficult,
That's
I
true.
guess, it takes longer for stuff. Here's the one thing, because as far as it being a third world country, in a lot of ways, it's run a lot better than bits of the United States that I was living in. And then other
Right.
ways, not so much. The postal service is fucked. You cannot send a letter and expect it to get anywhere. And I've been into the post office and I look at and it's just like piles of stuff. And they're like, oh, you could go have a look in that pile if you wanted, or so on and so forth. The post office is a wonderful example of like allowing the government to run things and where that's just never a good idea. Just like in the USA, the DMV is the perfect example of why you should not let the government run things, you know.
Right. All right. On Facebook, Zach Carter asks, what is your biggest pet peeve when it comes to musicians creating music? So your gripes about the music industry, or is it political correctness, or people competing against each other? Of course, Ayn Rand said the creative man is not motivated by a desire to beat others, but by the desire to achieve.
Yeah, here's the thing. I really don't care. I have no interest in what they're doing. I don't even consider myself to be part of the music industry. I sort of opted out of all that and created my own one a long time ago, and that's all I've ever been doing. I'm only interested if what I'm doing today is better than what I was doing yesterday, and that's all I'm interested in. However, other people want to conduct themselves and run their businesses, you know, that's fine. I like it when I'm inspired by people. I like it when I encounter greatness in others, and that inspires greatness in me. When you see greatness in others, what's cool about that? It's that art. It's like that art mirror thing I was talking about. Because when you see greatness in someone else, it's within you. That's you recognizing something that's already in you, and maybe you haven't worked out how to manifest it yet, or maybe you haven't even noticed it in yourself yet. But that's what that is, and that's a cool thing. So I like it when I see musicians doing cool stuff, and otherwise, I really don't care.
All right. This is an interesting question from LinkedIn, Timothy Rockford asking, how do you maintain positivity with a world that feels like it wants to push us down at times?
Yeah, well, you just got to put things in context. So I think about my grandmother a lot, and everything that happened in her lifetime. You know, she was the eldest of 13. Her father worked in a coal mine. She, you know, raised her sisters essentially. They lived in the Midlands, in Dickensian sort of sort of shit, and she saw
Well,
the radio invented and saw the TV invented, and she was in World War II, and she had a wonderful time. She really enjoyed it, and you know, everything that she saw in her life, and throughout her life, the world was about to end, and throughout her life, evil people were conspiring against every other people, and throughout her life. We were supposed to get wiped out a million times. Even in my own life, I remember when I was a little kid, it was all AIDS and uh, greenhouse things and blah blah blah. And you know, there's always Yet here we are, after hundreds and thousands of millions of years, of which we all should have been blown up or wiped out or killed or something, supposedly a million times. Here we are. The very fact of our existence. How could one not be optimistic? How could one not be grateful and full of joy to have working lights and communication systems that allow us to experience and communicate with each other and share ideas across this world that's supposed to be a prison? Yet here we are. It's a miracle, and if that's what you look for, then that's what you'll get. And we humans are stupid like that. We constantly have to remember, we very quickly acclimatize to a new situation and start taking things for granted. And we all have to remind ourselves of these things like all the time. And that's a big part of what I do with my music. And yeah, but that's it. It's just context. Just the fact that you're not scrubbling around in the dirt, the fact that you can step outside and someone's not throwing a brick at your face. The fact that there's running water and there's electricity, that's a miracle. Your ancestors didn't have that stuff. Like whatever, we look back, we go, oh, it was so much better in the trad days of whatever. What, when you died in childbirth and you had, rich people had wooden teeth.
Right. Yeah, no, it's true. I think Peter Diamandis says, whatever you focus on, you move toward. And so I like to say that to be objective, you have to have perspective. And given that we have, as human beings, this kind of biological evolutionary tendency to focus on threats and negativity, that's not necessarily giving you an objective perspective on what's happening in the world. So you have to kind of make a conscious effort to override that by recognizing what's going right in your life, even if you're going through a really hard time, because that will give you a sense of what your strengths are, so that you can gather your strength and find a way to move on. So gratitude is very important, and I think it's an objectivist, self-interested value.
Yeah,
all right.
exactly.
I'll take one more here. Well, two last questions because they're so good. Alan, 67 on X asks, what do you think someone needs to get started with making music today? Asking of the man who started with Scotch tape and cassettes.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever you have around you, maybe there is a table and you could bang it rhythmically. You might have a computer. Lots of people do, I've heard. And in a contemporary computer everything is more than was in the most sophisticated recording studio a decade or so ago. So you have everything. You have too much. I think that's what freaks people out. They have too much. It's like looking at Netflix or something. There is too much choice. What do I do? Where do I start? I just worked, personally, I didn't have that issue. I just worked things out for myself, and therefore I made lots of mistakes and spent a lot of time unnecessarily doing things wrong. But it did allow me to create a style of my own that I otherwise could not have. These days, you can go on YouTube and you can watch people making music, and they'll be using digital audio workstations, or they'll be using hardware. Watch a bunch of people making stuff, see what looks intuitive to you. Pick one of these things and just go all in on it. There's every resource for you to learn how to do these things. You can become very proficient very, very quickly. There's 12-year-olds in India who will teach you everything for free, and there's 12-year-olds in the USA as well. There's 12-year-olds all over the place. They've got internet connections and they really like showing people how to do stuff. And here's the other thing: it's not just 12-year-olds. There's like 68-year-old professional geniuses, and they just have YouTube channels now, and they'll show you how to do everything. It's crazy. So yeah. But here's one thing: when you start, don't stop. Just make something every day and just keep going, because you will learn a lesson from each thing. And so if you do a thing every day, you'll learn a new lesson, and you'll very quickly get a lot more proficient.
I think, there she is.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm back. All right.
She's
final
back.
I thought it was
Amazing.
you. This is actually a really great example of I'm thinking, oh, he's in Mexico. Oh, his internet must be crap. No, I'm here in Malibu, California, and it's me.
I've actually got better internet here than I've had anywhere in my life. You understand?
Wow.
I got 300 upload. I got a 300 meg upload. Like, they don't got stuff like this in Tokyo.
Well, I mean, I think that was, in a way, was sort of the theme of our gala. We imported the entire complement of speakers almost from Mexico, because we had Ricardo
You
Salinas and
did.
all of the amazing innovations that he's bringing that are providing opportunity and modernizing people, modernizing life in Mexico. All right, my last question. Well, it's actually a last question from our audience. You were talking about 12-year-olds when I decided, or I didn't decide, my computer decided that I was going to bug out. And somebody asked about whether having children has, how that, let's see. Alex Morena asking, did starting a family change anything in your life when it comes to your music?
Yeah, it did, because starting a family and having a son, it caused me very, very quickly to get my shit together. So previously I was kind of,
Right.
being a faffy aroundy artist, sort of following my whims in this direction and that direction and so on and so forth. And, having a family and taking on that responsibility made me realize that I really needed to get my shit together in all manner of areas, albeit financial and organizational and health-wise and physicality and all sorts. You have to become, they don't pay attention to what you say, they pay attention to what you do. Aside from the fact that you need to provide and all that sort of thing, they will model everything upon you. So if you don't want some like loser child, then you're going to have to not be a loser yourself, So anyway, a direct result of this was me sorting myself out in all manner of areas, which led to more competent, more technically good, more just better in every level of music. Sorting myself out meant my music improved, just ridiculously, unimaginably, on every level. And this continues to be the case as I continue to improve and sort things out, because there is a great deal that still to do, and there will be, and then I'll die, and that will be that. It'll be great.
Well, it'll be that. That's true. Although you'll be inspiring people, I'm sure, just as so many of the collaborations and Ayn Rand has inspired you. So your art will live on.
This is true. What we
we
do echoes on, right? If we choose to do something useful, it will echo on. I think about Marcus Aurelius, nearly 2,000 years ago, writing in his little diary, and how to this day, still, that very specifically, and he's talking in it about how no one will remember anyone in 2 generations. You'll be completely forgotten. Might be the case for a lot of people, but you, Mr. Aurelius, we remember you. God bless.
And as he said, to remember death. And so to remember that, our time is limited and we need to use it productively. And so with that limited time.
Well, he actually said, one thing he said was, if you do not use it to free yourself, it will be gone and will never return. He said things about productive, but specifically that, if you do not take this opportunity to free yourself, it will be gone and never return.
I love it. All right. So folks, go to Akira's website, sign up for his music newsletter, buy his music, and buy his amazing merch. And any other place that people should keep track of you, Akira?
I do my best to be wherever people are. There's no point having a lemonade stand and sticking it at the top of Everest and expecting everybody to come to the top of Everest and get you a lemonade. You know what I mean? So I do my best to be where people are. So if you hang out on YouTube, we're there. If you hang out on Spotify, we're there. If you're one of these people who refuses to do anything but scroll on an Instagram story feed, you will find us there. Awesome. We do our best to be where you might be. And if you are somewhere and we are not there, please do let me know, and we'll see what we can do.
Terrific. All right. Well, thank you, my dear. Say hello to Charlotte for me. And this was so much fun. Thank you for your phenomenal gift of your art and how you've enriched so many people's lives, and excited for your next creative chapter. We will be staying tuned. So thank you. Namaste.
Hey, gracias.
And
gracias,
thanks
Jenny.
I know. I love that. I go by Jag, but I think I'm going to need to trade that in for Jagny. That's
Yeah, it's
definitely
Jagny. You'll always be
superior.
Jagny to me.
I like it. All right. Well, and I want to also just thanks all of you who joined us. Thanks again for the little bit of technological disruptions, and thanks for your patience. If you enjoyed this video or any of the content that we put out at the Atlas Society, remember we are a nonprofit, and all of your donations are tax deductible. If you've never given to the Atlas Society, even a $10 or $20 donation will be doubled by our board of trustees. So thanks for your consideration. And I hope that you will join us next week when the president of the University of Austin, Pano Canelos, is going to join us on the Atlas Society Ask.